and you're listening to Frey. Starting right now. Here's your host, Alfredo Leon.
That guy, this is a deep Frey. As let's get started with the news about the NASCAR Monster Energy Cup Series, and we'll begin with Denny Hamlin winning the Bojangles Southern 500 at Darlington Raceway on Labor Day weekend, Sunday night, as he of Joe Gibbs Racing won the race there. Hamlin overcame a miscue when she just missed pit road and was able to chase down Martin Truex Jr. with 3 laps to go to win the race. Here's Hamlin afterwards speaking about the win after the race there. Here it is.
Drove our ass off. That's as hard as I could drive. We got the flying 11. It's flying.
He also spoke about how he was able to tame the track, referred to as too tough to tame.
Yeah, I can't say enough. Well, this track is just amazing. I love this racetrack. This is the second one. This one's sweeter. I mean, to go through the adversity we did right there, miss a pit lane, and I knew I had to drive my tail off to get it back, and that's all I had.
He also won the race there in 2010, the Southern 500. Hamlin checked up after he slid by the entrance with 54 laps to go in the race and was behind Truex by over 20 seconds. Hamlin was able to chip away at Truex's lead and pass him after Truex hit the wall, in which he got a flat tire. With the victory, Hamlin was able to sweep throwback weekend at Darlington after he won the Xfinity race on Saturday. Truex was able to win the first 2 stages, and as a result of that, he clinched NASCAR's regular season championship and having the number 1 seed going to the playoffs in 2 weeks. Here is the rest of the top 10. Kyle Busch finishing second, driving the 18 car for Joe Gibbs Racing. His brother Kurt finishing third, driving the 41 car for Stewart-Haas Racing. Austin Dillon finishing fourth, driving the 3 car for Richard Childress Racing. Eric Jones finishing fifth, driving the 77 car for Furniture Row Racing. Matt Kenseth finishing sixth, driving the 20 car for Joe Gibbs Racing. Ryan Newman finishing seventh, driving the 31 car for Richard Childress Racing. Martin Truex Jr., who wound up finishing 8th, driving the 78 car for Furniture Row Racing after he had the flat tire. Still not exactly what he wanted, but he was able to get a top 10 out of it, finishing 8th. Kevin Harvick finishing 9th, driving the 4 car for Stewart-Haas Racing. Jamie McMurray finishing 10th, driving the 1 car for Chip Ganassi Racing. Other notables include Chase Elliott finishing 11th, driving the 24 car for Hendrick Motorsports. Teammate Jimmy Johnson driving the 48 car, also for Hendrick Motorsports. Brad Keselowski finishing 15th, driving the 2 car for Team Penske. And Dale Earnhardt Jr. finishing 22nd in his final Southern 500, driving the 88 car for Hendrick Motorsports. And Danica Patrick driving the 10 car for Stewart-Haas Racing and finished 26th. The next Monster Energy Cup Series race will be the Federated Auto Parts 400 at Richmond International Raceway in Richmond, Virginia on Saturday, September 9th at 7 p.m. as the 16 drivers will be revealed for the playoffs coming up in Chicagoland the following week. Coverage will begin at 7:30 Eastern Time on NBC, as said. Good win for Hamlin. I sort of knew that he was going to be able to get the victory, especially after the fact that after he got the tires and everything, when he had to pit because he didn't get the caution that he wanted later in the race, and he wound up having to pit. He tried to stretch it on fuel. Him and Kyle Busch tried to stretch on fuel, his teammate, and they wound up going over 50-something laps, probably around 57 laps to be exact. And since there was no caution, they wanted to stretch out, especially after he and Busch were the only 2 cars on the lead lap at the time. And since there was no caution to trap the rest of the field, he and Busch wound up going to pit road and had to service for fuel and tires, as Darlington has a lot of issues when it comes to fuel. Well, mostly tires, but they had a fuel situation as well. They needed to get their fuel in and get tires as well there. But Hamlin was able to overcome it. I just knew after that, because even though what Kevin Harvick did was smart, Harvick was able to go to pit road, realizing that he had a problem with a tire. That may have ended up costing him because he had more laps on his tires. But he had a problem, but other drivers didn't realize that he had a problem. They saw that Harvick went to pit road, saying that maybe that was an advantage for him. It was for a while, as he had the lead, but he wasn't able to take advantage of that because he had way more laps on his tires than Hamlin and Busch and Martin Truex Jr. and other guys, because they had fresher tires. And the guys that had the freshest tires were Busch and Hamlin, as they pitted on lap 13. Kyle Busch, that is. He pitted on lap 13 as well as Hamlin, and they had fresher tires as a result, and they were able to pass a bunch of cars to be able to get the top 2 spots there, as Truex had way more laps on his tires. He pitted probably around 20 laps earlier, because he pitted shortly after Kevin Harvick. Kevin Harvick had the worst tires, and he had to end up settling for ninth instead. But still a good day there, even though Truex didn't get exactly what he wanted either, as he had to hit the wall in the last lap. Well, just before the white flag, actually, 2 laps to go. And it looked like I thought he was going to cause a caution because he hit the wall. He was really slow. I thought there would have been a caution and then it would have been a overtime. But Hamlin wound up taking the white flag and he wound up winning the race. So that was a good win for Hamlin there. Incredible how he was able to make that big of a comeback. Not surprised they made that comeback because of the fact that Truex didn't have as good tires as Hamlin did, and that made a difference late in the race as he went so many laps on the tires. Probably went over 60-something laps with the tires, as Darlington is known for having been tough on tires because of how rough the surface is. The track is old, and even though the driver could go through on the fuel run, it doesn't matter because tires are such an important thing there in Darlington. And if you don't have tires, fresh ones, then you could end up really slowing down your lap time or even blowing a tire as a result of really long runs. Cautions ended up coming out because of the fact that the tires were just worn out, and it made a big difference during the race as drivers were going to 150 miles an hour compared to when you got fresh tires, as drivers were going up to like 170 miles an hour, just because of how much of a fall off it occurs when a lot of drivers end up going through a bunch of laps on their tires compared to when they're fresh. So earlier in the race, though, the drivers ended up having to get 3 sets of tires early because so many cautions were coming out. And that played a big role there as far as getting drivers with tires and everything like that. And a lot of tires had to be changed early, and then that played a factor later in the race as drivers were getting tires later as well. And it's just important at Darlington. The tires are so important, and with those tires, it allows drivers to be able to compete and be able to make up spots and make up time. That's what Hamlin was able to do because he had the freshest rubber. He and Kyle Busch. That's why they went to take the top 2 spots. That's why I wasn't surprised of the fact that Hamlin won the race and not Truex because they had the worst tires there. But Truex did a good job having the lead as long as he did. Pretty impressive what he was able to do there. But unfortunately, we had to had his tire flat late in the race because he had so many laps on his tires and it was so worn. It's kind of hard to go that far with those tires. It was also a throwback weekend as well, as some of the drivers wound up rocking classic paint schemes as it was the 1989 through 89 era of NASCAR that they were celebrating, as it brought back some familiar paint schemes like Austin Dillon and Ryan Newman. They wound up having the old classic Dale Earnhardt paint scheme from the 87 when he won his championship there, rocking the GM Goodwright paint scheme then. But since that's not the sponsor now, they use their sponsors that they have. Dillon has American Ethanol and Newman has Caterpillar, and they use the classic design that Earnhardt used in the 80s when he won his championship in 87. It had the classic yellow and blue that Earnhardt was so famous for having on his car before he had the black colors, which got him the nickname the Man in Black there. But that's pretty cool to see. They celebrate the history of NASCAR. Seeing the classic victory lane with the old Gatorade logo, that's pretty cool to see how much they celebrate the history of NASCAR. And Darlington is that weekend where they do a lot of that stuff, and drivers end up using a lot of classic paint schemes. Something that's pretty cool to see that comes out of a weekend like that. And it's something that drivers celebrate and fans celebrate just to get to see paint schemes that were around back in the day that may not be able to see then. It's kind of hard to replicate the original, but the one that stood out the most was the 2-car for Brad Keselowski. Basically exactly accurate, 100% accurate to what Rusty Wallace had when he drove the car with that paint scheme from 1991 through 95. That was pretty cool to see that as well. That's a good weekend they celebrated, and that's pretty cool to see how they did it with Throwback Weekend and everything like that, which is pretty fun to see something like that and see how they celebrate the history of NASCAR, keeping the legacy of drivers alive by using certain paint schemes that associate with certain numbers and certain drivers from back in the day or now as well, which is pretty cool to see there. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed. Be sure to leave a like, subscribe if you are new, and we'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.